Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Can we take our seats and begin? Good morning, everyone. Linelda, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman,
Present.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Yo.
and Town Attorney Tercivia. Thank you.
And we will stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If anybody's wondering what's in my second head that's growing here, I had a Mohs treatment the other day. I got all of the cancer cells out, so I'm on a speedy recovery now. Okay, so that's what that's all about.
Better on your forehead than on your nose, like I went through.
Oh, I had one on my nose too. It's all from when we were kids and paid no attention to any of it. And now we're paying the price for it all. Call for the approval of the agenda.
I move
Anybody
we
have anything?
approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Linelda, anybody in queue for comments, public comments?
There are no pre-registered public comments.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the ordinances. Do we need to read all of these into the? I mean, they were done last time also.
Everybody on that side of the room are going to say yes. I could say you could reference the number, but that side of the room wants you to read it. So I will, that side between the clerk and the attorney generally.
All right, I'll just explain them then. But, the first is ordinance number 2021-12. Excuse me. This is providing for the notice of the advertising of the referendum, providing for referendum canvassing, providing for severability, repeal of laws and conflicts, codification, and the effective date. Any discussion on it?
So these are going to be, these next four are the items that you wanted to see on the ballot, or at least referendum questions. So this is the first read, as the questions have to be approved via ordinance. So these are the ones that you all agreed on. And then after we do all four, if you're comfortable with the language set forth, then we'll resume probably with that heavy lift around the funding that we kind of we had to double back to.
So we just have to officially go through all this. Did anybody have any questions on the language? Everybody comfortable?
We're just talking about 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have any questions about 12.
Okay,
I would just confirm that this is relevant for a charter, not an ordinance. No? Just confirming. Next.
except the actual question on the referendum would not be all of this heavy lifting.
Right.
Yeah, it'd just be the specific question would be the ballot question. Shall the town amend charter at section blah, blah, blah to provide in person may serve more than 3 consecutive terms in any one office, nor shall there be more than 12 consecutive years. And then the specific language is referenced in the ordinance, but that's the question.
Okay, but the key is, are we comfortable with the language after, we all did our homework?
Yes.
Okay, we need to vote on this to put it into the record. Marshall?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we need a motion
Okay, we need
for
a
the
motion.
first read. This is the first read. Then we'll bring it back that December 9th date for the second and final reading. And then that would give Linelda like a day to get everything over to the supervisor of election to ensure it's on the ballot. That's a process.
Okay. Need a motion from somebody?
I move that we accept ordinance number 2021-012 regarding the referendum on term limits for commission positions.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to 2021-013. This is the one that requires a referendum vote if, for any reason, we were to desire moving fire rescue, police, or water out of our control into a third-party control. That would mean, for example, if we were to sell one of those four, or if we wanted to take police, for example, and abolish our police department and bring in the county police department. This would then require it to go to referendum. So following page 13 is all the language for that. Anybody have any questions on the language?
No, the only thing if I read it correctly, it also means that if we want to acquire something, we need to have a referendum. For example, if we want to acquire providing fire rescue to another municipality, it looks like we would have to need a referendum. for that.
Where did you see that? What page?
Let me find it.
Outsource, abolish, merge, sell, merge.
Where are you, John?
I'm
Would
on-
that give us, could we merge along and still maintain managerial control, but if we were to, in a sense, if you reverse the roles for fire and all of a sudden we decided to assume, say, Gulfstream, not that we're,
Right. no,
just
no,
saying if
obviously.
they contacted us, could we have them come on board with us? I think we could because we retain all that managerial control.
But yeah, but we would still have to have a referendum on it. You couldn't just do it. Says merge with.
Mayor, do you see where it says merge?
Yeah,
That's page 1631.
Oh, I was on page 5.
I'm on page 14.
Okay.
You're on 14 also. It's also on 16.
Yeah, I guess I'd also like to talk a little bit more in depth on this one. All the other changes, it seems that we're doing, we're addressing stuff that's already in the charter. So this is something that's completely new
Mhm.
that we're adding to the charter. I guess I'm concerned that we're taking it, taking away this power from the commission. The 5 of us are, and whoever will come after us, are the ones that are most knowledgeable about what's going on in the town. Being involved in my first referendum, we had a good turnout, but it was 40% turnout. We had to rely on a lot of outreach in order to inform everyone. I guess it was enlightening to me at some of the voters aren't as involved in, what's going on in the town. And I think we are in the best position to make these types of decisions. So I guess I'd like for us to talk a little bit more in depth about, like, why does this need to go in the charter? Learning, going through this process, there's a very long process when we have to take something to the voters. There's a lot of information that we need to convey. I guess I'm also concerned about all the misinformation that comes out with a referendum that I saw this most recent time. I guess I would like to vet whether or not this really belongs in the charter, whether there are alternatives, maybe putting it in an ordinance. And then that way there wouldn't be as long of a lead time. I guess I'm just thinking into the future. Right now, going through what we just went through, it just seems very obvious we wouldn't want to give this away. We wouldn't want any future commission to give this away. But what if something unforeseen happens in the future? And the commission are the individuals that are most knowledgeable of what's going on. And you're basically tying our hands. I don't know what time frame we would talk, 6 months at least before you can, even make a change. I guess I'd like to discuss whether or not putting it in ordinance is something that we would want to do, because at least that's something that we can change. It brings public comment and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to putting it in the charter. I definitely have concerns about that, putting something like this to vote in the event that something bad happens and it becomes obvious that the change needs to be made.
You brought up a number of really, really important points. Let's first discuss charter versus ordinance. But then I'd like to back up and talk about your first points. So I'm going to turn it over to council first.
Well, you could do this either way. Of course, you could pass an ordinance or you could put it in the charter. Pass an ordinance could be amended by the commission. So that kind of goes to the heart of what you're talking about. Is this a commission decision or is it a referendum decision? Once it goes into the charter with this language, then it's going to be a referendum vote. And then the hands are tied for good or bad, because I hear both sides of this. And, you know, the good is it prevents a third party, Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, the sheriff's office. Those are the two big gorillas in the county on this, from coming in and quote, taking over your police or fire department. The other side of the coin is it does limit the commission's authority to be nimble and make a change if for whatever reason, some commission in the future feels it's in the town's best interest to do one of those things. A little bit related to that, and so I was talking to Marshall, do I want to go down this path or not? I'm not sure if I do, but our biggest, to me, the biggest risk we have with the establishment of our fire department is the COCPN process with the county, because we don't control that process. The county controls that process, and we're making good progress. I understand Representative Caruso has been supportive, but that's the one thing that's hanging out there that could limit our ability to start our own fire department. And in that case, what would we do if we can't get that COCPN? And if we have to go to referendum to contract with some other agency to allow us to use their COCPN, that becomes a possible issue. Now, is that a long shot issue? Yes, but is a potential risk.
So if we put this in the charter and we don't get the COCPN, we're in trouble. Or does putting it in the charter give us more leverage to get the COCPN?
The managerial control is the hard part. So I'm City X that has a COCPN in Palm Beach County, and I can operate a fire department in my jurisdiction. And for whatever reason, the county doesn't grant our COCPN in a timely way. And we need to piggyback, for want of a better word, on City X's COCPN. Well, if I'm that city, I need managerial control because now it's my license that you're operating under. And if we have managerial control, that might put a wrinkle into that.
So
Now-
could you just, for the benefit of the audience that might be listening and for the record, confirm what COCPN stands for?
Sure, it's called a Certificate of Convenience and Public Necessity. And the only way you're allowed to operate a fire rescue department in Palm Beach County is if you obtain one of those through the process that's controlled by the county. So there is something called the EMS, Emergency Medical Service Council. That's level one. You've got to get through that process, and then it goes to the county commission. And the county has an ordinance that's on the books today, which is very unfriendly to starting a new fire department. It almost seems like, and I know we've had this conversation, that back in 1991, when they did this, it was right after Tequesta created their own fire department, the last fire department that was independently created in the county. So I don't know for sure, but it's certainly the suspicion that, okay, that was a knee-jerk reaction to, we want to close the doors, because Palm Beach Fire Rescue had really just gotten established in the mid-'80s, and I was involved in that establishment. So I know Palm Beach Fire Rescue was becoming bigger, expanding their influence. Tequesta passes theirs. I'm out of the county at that point, so I'm not really privy to what the county's thoughts were, but all of a sudden the door really got closed on opening new fire departments. And you haven't seen any new fire departments in the county in those last 30 years now. So the way their ordinance is currently written, you have to have all this quote experience which how do you get that experience? It's like the first job seeker. Every job says, we want to hire you with experience. Well, how do I get the experience until you hire me? Are we working with the county to change their process? Yes. As the state representative has been assistance, yes. But will that happen in time for us? Will that happen? Will that change their ordinance happen? Will they allow us to be a pilot program? Will they allow us to have our own COCPN? That's the big issue. And that's where it's going to come down to, frankly, a political issue. Because yes, we'll talk a lot about experience, and the folks that we have as consultants already certainly have tons of experience. The folks you're going to hire as firefighters will have tons of experience. But will the policymakers at the county want to create another department that arguably competes with their Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Department? So that's kind of laying it all on the table. There's the risk in something like this. It's also a protection once you establish your department from preventing a Palm Beach Fire Rescue or a Boca Raton or a Delray, whatever city it is, from coming in and taking you over without the citizens' approval. So it's a sword and a shield at the same time.
I guess, can you explain that? How could another organization take over?
You can take
Like
over
you
your-
said that it would be a shield against Boca or some other place to take, how
So
would
South
that
Palm
happen?
Beach, for example, a year and a half, 2 years ago, they had an election and there were clients. I'm not saying anything that's not in the public record and out there. And after that election, there was folks on the council that advocated that the South Palm Beach should give up their police department, which was a 6 or 7 person police department, and contract with Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. And that's what they did. The council voted to contract the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and have a 10-year contract and the Sheriff's Office contract saved that town, I don't know, 15, 20%. And they were spending, say, rough numbers, 1.3 million, 1.4 million. They were going to reduce it down to 1 or 1.1 million, provide enhanced services, more resources. And that council made a decision in the best interest of that town to essentially outsource that police department to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. And that's occurred throughout this county for the last 20 or 30 years with both fire rescue and sheriff's office, because there were certain advantages to being part of that bigger organization. You don't see it as much with municipalities, in terms of expanding into others. Green Acres has had conversations with some neighboring cities about expanding their fire rescue.
Yeah, I think there may be a semantics issue here. They didn't come in and take over.
Right.
They were invited.
Yeah, and the council sound like they were in favor of it.
Yeah,
So
right.
if we are not in favor of it, is there any risk of someone else
No,
coming in?
No.
Okay, I think that's important.
yeah, that's why I was saying there's semantics issue.
Right.
They were invited to come in and take over.
Right, and it seemed like they had the information and that's what they decided was best for the
Correct.
town for whatever reason.
I would just in one scenario, under the fire scenario, if we didn't have coverage, I think the county has, through certain other provisions, would come in and make you pay their
Yeah,
millage to do that.
Actually, we're getting way off the track. The question was, and forgive me if I'm going the wrong way here, stop me. The question really was, should this be handled through charter or not?
Right. And that's really
And the difference is flexibility.
exactly, because if it's in the charter by referendum, then any change is going to have to go by referendum, which also gives you that protection. The other alternative, the other example was Palm Springs. Palm Springs put this in, one of the first cities to put this in, because there was a real, what they believe was a threat from Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office from taking over their police department. They didn't want that to happen. So their way to prevent that was to put something like this in the charter, because they had members of their police department come to city council meetings and advocate that we should go green. And then they start getting that political pressure on the commissioners to go to the sheriff's office.
Okay, there's another reason. The other reason is down the road, and we can put it out 5 years, 10 years, whatever, or more. You don't know who's going to be sitting up here. And the people sitting up here might be very financially oriented. as opposed to what is the best public safety issues. And it may be a significant savings if they went to a county sheriff's coverage as opposed to our own police department. And hypothetically, let's say they could save $500,000 by doing that. They may decide to do it. Whereas the electorate may want to keep the current sheriff's department, current police department, and spend the additional $500,000. That could be one issue. Could be the same thing, obviously, for any of it. They could say, well, we should sell our water plant, and we could make X number of dollars. And why shouldn't we do that? We're still going to get the same water. Well, it all depends on what the electorate wants, not what these five want. Right now, we're blessed with a great commission. And I think, I mean, based on the 89% favorable vote, the electorate is confident in this commission. But again, you could have a runaway commission down the road. The other thing is, once we have our own fire department, there will be a union. There could be, down the road, the union might start to support potential candidates for this commission that are very union driven. Those people could then be sitting up here and be making decisions that are based on benefits for the union, not benefits for the town. They could then want to change and sell off. So you don't know what the motivations are going to be down the road. So one stumbling block that they would have to get over is going to the electorate, not having, all they need is 3 people on this commission. And then bang, you just lost your fire department. So things like that could happen. Another reason to go to the electorate and not let the commission just make the decisions on their own, because they are huge decisions for this town. And it's hard to change them down the road. So those are some things to think about.
But how, so we could still have it as a, the same concept, but put it in an ordinance instead of the charter. I guess I don't understand.
Well, if it's an ordinance, then these 5 make the decision.
But it takes, you would have to change the ordinance. You have to
Yeah,
have,
but 3 people can change the ordinance.
right, and it takes time.
Not a lot of time. It takes, you got to write the ordinance, you need to read. And the second one, you pass it.
Right,
Well, it could be a month. It normally takes us 2 or 3 months.
right. And if
But
we
you-
have an engaged resident, they
but-
would be coming to making, public
Yeah,
comment.
I mean, the electorate, citizens could come and complain about it if they even knew about it.
Right,
And we know a handful of people follow what we do.
right.
I guess it's between 80 and 100 watch, the videos of this. But, we've got, 3,800 voters. Okay, so
Right,
a very small percentage pay attention.
exactly.
Now, I'd like to go back to your opening statement, and that is, we 5 know more than the voters know. That's always the case. Okay. And when you have a good commission, you kind of say, well, the shame is we have to spend a lot of our time and some money educating the electorate. But that's the way it is in America. And that's our duty. It's a shame, but we did a good job. We spent a lot of time trying to educate them on why go to our own fire department. But that's what we signed up for. And, we have to communicate it. We have to educate them. If we don't, they would have voted no. Just like, they voted no to a fire truck way back because of poor education. We didn't educate them back then. But that's what we have to do. So we got to think down the road as to what kind of commissions we might have. We know in the history, we haven't had great commissions. We haven't had great town managers. Right now, we got a good combination. So if I was assured that we were going to have a good combination all the time, I'd say, sure, we should do an ordinance.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little concerned about the loss of flexibility in making a needed change.
In the
for-
event of an emergency.
in the event of an unforeseen situation. You know, I think when we went to Delray, it was a clear and obvious decision, you know, to do that. And now we are where we are, and it's a clear and obvious decision. And we, even in the position that we're in right now with the ordinances and the rules that we have now, that takes a long time. So, and I also think about the current funding limit and how many, you know, looking now at the way it was done many years ago, you know, I question, you know, why did they do that? It ties our hands in doing, you know, some, you know, important things. So so that is my concern, is that it ties our hands. And I think we are elected here to make those types of decisions. We're in the best position because we are involved in what's going on. So that is my concern about putting it in the
So
charter.
could I
It's
comment?
legitimate. I'm with you. It's a legitimate
it's a tough
concern.
decision,
I'll give it to you in
yeah.
a second. I think things that would affect our town forever, the townspeople should have a voice in. And selling our water plant affects the town forever. And I don't think 5 people should make that decision on their own.
Yeah, but what if something happens to the water? What if something happens to our water plant and we have to do something?
No, we have.
Oh, that's an emergency. That's a different story.
Yeah.
We have emergency.
Yeah, I guess, can we talk
have
about that? What
yeah.
happens in
Well,
an
we have
emergency?
emergency powers.
We have emergency powers and we can deal with those kinds of
Yeah,
things.
that's different.
So what if, yeah, so if something happens to the water plant and it becomes obvious that we need another source for water, what happens?
Well, we have contracts with both Delray and with Boca for emergency water.
And what if it's a long-term situation?
You would
I
have
don't know that there's a
you
term.
would still have managerial control over that contract. You're not selling or abolishing if you out of a source of water.
And
But we're
then,
down pretty deep
and
though.
it's long-term, so you would discuss a long-term solution and that might then require a referendum.
Well, if the long-term solution was they were going to take over our water.
Right,
plant.
exactly.
So
So-
go ahead, John.
So from my perspective, I said outsource, abolish, sell, no problem. With merge, I was thinking, well, that's typically going to involve a commitment financially, more than 350,000 today, or whatever the number is after we resolve, you know, the commission dollar limits. That it would involve something on that scale when you're talking about the major enterprises that we have, right? So to me, I said, okay, then merge makes sense. But here's to me where I also think even as important from what we saw in the election. It's not only that we could have in the future a commission that is politically motivated and they decide on a vote of 3 to do away with something. That's pretty amazing, right? Without having to address it with the community or whatever. But more than that, you can have some 1, 2, or 3 very strong activists in the town where the rest of the town is apathetic, but
Yeah.
they appeal to 2 or 3 commissioners and apply lots of pressure and get their way when it may not make any sense for the long-term benefit of the community. It's more of a parochial interest that can be, and we see it all the time nationally, we see it, all of this parochial force being applied to change culture, to change systems, to change government. So I would be cautious about putting it on the commission and their judgment. Wow, that was an exclamation mark. And to rely on this in our charter.
I also have another perspective on that. I don't remember where I heard it, but I do recall that Palm Beach County was making a push to get a lot of the smaller towns to use their fire rescue. And they were putting pressure on some of these towns. And this would save us from that. They wouldn't be able to come in and pressure it. And while, yes, it would take a referendum, I think when you're talking about these items, I agree with Doug. For these things, I would like to have a referendum. I don't want it just to be changed by ordinance by who happens to be sitting up here. I think we need, well, you're right. It limits us a little bit, but I think the protections that we get from it outweigh the fact that it puts another hoop to jump through.
I'd like to add, this is exactly the opposite of my entire background. Okay. I or my board made all the decisions. Okay. But, you know, this is different. It's a municipality.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's where yeah, you're right. You're right.
Okay.
Yep.
Peg, you want to add on this?
Sure, thanks, Mayor. I understand what Commissioner Moore is saying, because there have been other actions that have been undertaken in the last 3-4 years that sort of erode some of the commission powers or whatever, for better or worse. So I understand what she's saying, because we do put in the work. But I do think we need a level of care here and keep it as a charter item, because we need the people, if they get fired up, to be able to have an immediate voice by voting. And we don't know sometimes what the non-activist people out there are thinking or saying. We don't hear from them. They're happy if they have electric and a clear street and water. And so, and one example, I know in 2015, the commission studied doing a Barrier Island Fire Department. And I'm told by people in Ocean Ridge and Gulfstream, it was very popular and they were ready to go for it, using our station and a station in, I think, Manalapan. And the commission, I'm told, this is all hearsay, bless you, but the commission then in Highland Beach voted no. I think it was 4-1. And then the other towns fell out. Whereas if it put to popular vote, it may very well have passed and we would be there now. And I've heard a lot of people say, gee, we should have done that. It's easy, right up and down. I think it's like 11 miles. So I'm just throwing that out as an example. I'm all for putting it in the charter. I think it gives 3,800 people a voice and it takes the pressure off of us. And lastly, in an emergency, say for fire, if we weren't able to access our department, FEMA covers that as a federal mandate that other departments must step in and assist for however long. So if that
Okay.
helps, I'm all for it.
Want to add anything?
No, I mean, I think that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure, since like all of the other things have kind of seemed like they were already in the charter, so we were fine tuning them. This was something was new that we're adding to the charter, and I didn't want to, 7 years down the road, like, why did we do that? Adding something new to the charter. So I really wanted to hear the dialogue as to the rationale as to, why we are doing it. I mean, I really like the title of it, the self-rule. For me, I definitely like Highland Beach being its own municipality. I love our police department and I am really excited about our new fire department. So I'm all on board with that. I just didn't want to tie our hands for some unforeseen situation in the future, but I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it makes sense.
I think your points are all valid, no question. Particularly the fact that we five do know more.
Right.
Because we have access to more information. That's all.
I'd like to second that I appreciate her question, because it's good for us to rehash it and make sure that we've covered every angle.
For sure.
That's how we succeed.
But along with that, we have the responsibility to educate our population. And it's not easy sometimes because most of them are just not involved,
Right.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
It's not.
That was definitely enlightening to me through this process, is how much misinformation was conveyed through this whole thing.
Absolutely.
And so I guess that's what concerned me as I considered this piece.
And I mean, we were thrilled, and it's really, it sounds kind of crazy. We got 39% of the people, of potential voters to vote.
Right.
This world is kind of new to me, but to people that have been involved in
Yes.
elections, they say, my gosh, 39%, that's huge when you didn't have any candidates running for anything.
Yes.
He's shaking his head over there, you've been doing this for 30 years or whatever. I said, oh, I got only 39%. Well, I'm told that's really good. So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we've done good. Okay. Must
Exactly.
have been the food trucks that did it, right?
I mean, I think it was a lot of the things. Yeah, I was
Feed 'em and they vote.
I was involved in the canvassing board. And so, I was one of the first people to get that. And yeah, I definitely was like, oh my gosh, only 40 people, 40% of the people and like 10%, voted no. I was kind of more focused on, I was surprised that even 10% voted no, because I thought it was just so obvious. And then, I thought it was also interesting, the ratio of how many mailed in versus how many were there on an election day. More people mailed in, and it was like 15% of the people voted no on the mail-in ballot. So everyone who voted, the people who voted early, they were more likely to vote no. So I guess, on election day, perhaps we were more impactful, standing there, I don't know. But yeah, I guess I shouldn't be so focused. I guess it was a landslide and all that, but I was a little taken aback by, how many did
Well,
vote no.
I was told by somebody that had been around for quite a while, that if you win by 10%, that's called a landslide. Okay, so, but
Right,
just having two commissioners there, it just shows commitment.
right.
That's all. I mean, not too many people that I talked with did I educate enough to convince them, because obviously you're not selling them. It's just the fact that we're there,
Yeah,
a
the
chance to
presence.
meet more people that we didn't know. That was all. It wasn't a lot of discussion about fire rescue.
I will say that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would say that in response, I had a couple conversations with some voters who were voting no. So I was like, wow, come on, help me understand why you would vote no for this. It makes so much sense. And their attitude was really, I don't see any reason to change. I like the Delray service we have now, and I don't care about saving money. I'm just going to say no. Let's let it stay the way it is.
That was of the no's that I had spoken with throughout
Same,
the campaign. It was, I really don't care how much it costs. I'm satisfied with the
And the
service.
resistance to change.
Don't want to take a chance. Yeah, those are the ones that want to keep the couch that they have. They just
Yeah.
don't want to change. Yeah, Peg.
I just thought I'd add, by coincidence, I saw Wendy Sartori link yesterday in an event I attended, not a political event. And she brought up the fact that they're still counting provisional ballots.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and she expected our number might go up another point.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's just kind of a nice note.
Yep. But yeah, I think I'm guessing the majority of the no's were what you just said, John, and then the rest was misinformation, like you were saying, but job well done. Okay, anything else before we move on? So we're satisfied with merge in here as well then. Okay, anything else? Let's have a motion then.
I move that we accept ordinance number 2021-013 regarding managerial control of town services.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's move on to ordinance number 2021-014. This is administrative control of signing checks. That would be for the town manager and the finance director. What I didn't see added in here was the request to also put in the absence of one, that a commissioner would sign, and in the absence of both,
It's right here.
two
Oh, it is.
commissioners could sign. I just missed it. Okay.
It's there.
And does it also have two commissioners could sign?
Or,
Yes.
or two commissioners to sign in the absence of both the town manager and
Right.
finance.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yep. Two commissions. may
My
sign.
oversight.
It's there.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
So the question again is this relevant for a charter or an ordinance?
That might be a good question.
Marshall, you got a thought on that?
I think you could do it either way. I don't know that, and I'll ask Glenn legally, but this would be something I could think you could cover through an ordinance that by ordinance, all duty bound debts shall be paid and controlled in this fashion.
I would suggest then we do it by ordinance because then it would be one less question
Exactly.
to have on the voting.
My vote
but
on
again,
this one was not
Less
to do it
confusion.
with a
But if you
charter.
don't change the charter, it stipulates in the charter that a commissioner has to sign every check. If we don't change the charter, then it's
Oh,
town
it's-
manager
oh.
or finance director and a commissioner.
We're changing the reading of it,
Okay,
but we
so
could
it's-
delete it from the
Wait a
charter.
minute.
You could ask to delete it from the charter. Yeah.
Well, then they have to vote on deletion.
Yeah.
Without voting on what it's going to become.
Yeah.
Well, that
Right.
doesn't make sense then. Now, then it's got to go in. Okay.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Me. I had two minor points before Glenn renders his opinion, if that's okay. One, do we need to include sewer?
Include,
Our sewer, we don't state water, we don't say wastewater in this. Do we need to? include
Oh, the prior
wastewater?
question?
The
Yeah.
pri- Which question?
I forgot to ask it, yes.
well, we don't process any of it. We just run it to.
We ship it out, so.
I know we do, but I'm just asking. I just
I
didn't
don't
want it
think
to be
so.
an oversight. No.
No, I think so.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
then secondly, a lot of people don't carry cash anymore. I know my kids are on Apple Pay and all these other different things. So do we need to amend this language to address that fact that there's different methods of payment other than check?
As much as we try to move away from checks or write less checks, I don't see us in the foreseeable
doing
future
electronic.
eliminating checks.
Yeah.
But should we just include a provision that states or another method of payment?
Financial transaction transfer.
Yes. I'm just, I mean, in 5 years, who knows? I know people who don't carry any cash
It's a good point.
and the next
good point.
generation. So I just want to throw it out. I
You
mean,
don't
there's
do-
methods of payment. I don't even know what they are. They're,
You don't do electronic
Unbelievable.
transfers or anything?
Oh, we do a lot of ACH and wire transfers.
Yeah.
But again, the commission doesn't in there because not that I'm not, so I don't want to make it sound, that sounds like I was controlling something. I apologize. You guys control. It would be weird to have all of you on the bank statements and into the
Right.
electronic wire. It'd be kind of awkward. We sign things and forms to acknowledge for the auditor, so you see what we do when we move money. But it would be very difficult electronically if all of us had to then have, 7
Approval.
signers electronically to get into the bank accounts. It would get kind of, it'd get a little dicey.
You're not wiring out though. That's all internal wiring.
Well, we do ACHs. We've wired to some things, but we'll do ACHs to our insurance carriers. A few other types of payments that we make direct without a check. So we do it. So I mean, it's a good point. I mean, we do that now. I don't know that it's going to be every vendor. I mean, we do stuff with our credit cards now more so than we had in the past. So we don't write checks for $12 at the hardware store for a couple of bolts. We just use the card and then make one payment to the credit card processor.
Could we say checks or check equivalent? Because the money has to be kept in some sort of an account.
right, I'm just addressing the language, not
And,
the
so
process.
you don't, she's right. You
Good
don't know
point.
what's going to go in the future. We're putting this into
Yes, ma'am.
our charter. So let's make allowances that,
Glenn, are you comfortable with that or equivalent?
Would make sense, because I agree that ideally this wouldn't even be in the charter, but it is. So either take it out, and as you said, then people
That-
don't say,
that's a
what's
problem,
replacing
right.
it? So I
Good.
think the committee came up with their best solution to, but
Yeah.
say check or equivalent.
Yeah, good.
So the point is not to clean up the charter. I mean, it would seem that there are some situations where we don't need it in the charter.
Well, the problem is if you're going to take it out, you got.
Yeah, you have to still
They have
put it
to
on the
vote on it.
referendum.
right.
And therefore you have to tell them what you're going to do.
But you never have a charter that's cleaned up and updated. It's sustained is my point. Is that really?
Well, this is easier than trying to.
Right.
So
Yeah, no,
practicality
Yeah.
supersedes
Just trying to be.
substance, I guess.
It would get much more confusing if we had to pull it out and then do something else. And you still have to have the referendum to pull it out. So since you've got to have the question anyway, you might as well have the question to put it the way
This
you
is one
want
of
it.
those things that in my business career, this makes no sense, but I got it.
So I'm gonna put that word in two places, just so you know, for the record, it says, finance director will draw checks or equivalent only on the basis of duly approved invoices, claims, or payrolls, which checks or equivalent will be valid only. So the word or equivalent will be in two places.
That's good.
You're all okay with that?
Now, there was a discussion on putting a maximum on it. We comfortable without that? Recommendation from the gallery here was no max.
No max on
Are
what?
we comfortable with no maximum?
I'm comfortable.
Yeah. What
Okay.
about providing the commission with a monthly synopsis or of checks over a certain amount or something, just to have an information flow? Would that work?
I would suggest that.
A
I
monthly
think it's
accounting.
more paperwork than.
Yeah,
We
I,
already
true.
get that, right?
That's
I
true.
I mean,
mean,
we know what the burn rate is every
Yeah.
That's
month.
true.
I mean, think about.
Never
how
mind. I withdraw
many
my
checks and
statement.
things that go out every month.
Sure.
That would become a little overwhelming.
Right,
And if
right,
it's a
you're
big
right.
check and the town manager doesn't tell us about it, then he's in trouble. Or she's in trouble.
Okay, so we're all comfortable as a commission. No limit. John, shake your head if you're comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable.
Okay, all right, fine. Anything else then? Need a motion?
I move that we accept ordinance number 2021-014 regarding payment of legal debts as amended.
There's a
Second.
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 Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's move on to 2021-015. This is to amend to provide the establishing of the salaries of the mayor and commissioners by ordinance, providing for notice of advertising, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody have any discussion on the wording on this one?
Well, this one's going to be controversial. I already got some feedback saying that at least one activist is going to really be upset if we put this in as an ordinance. Yet, I believe over time, the commission now and in the future should be able to make that change. And if it's egregious in any way, the voters will decide at the next election. So it's not like it's forever that these future commissions that are out of control can hurt the town. There is an outside chance. You'd like to think that commissions will still have responsibility, discipline, and commitment because they will be accountable. So, but we should expect that we're going to get pushback. If on any of these, it'll be on this. And of course, you all understand, I definitely believe we need to raise the salaries that after 20, 10, 20 or 30 years, it's been the same amount. It's ridiculous. And clearly, the nature of the job has changed, not only over the last 20 years, the last 10 years, even the last 5 years. It's a whole different level. We've got new enterprises. We've got new.
Excuse me, John. We're just
I'm
talking
justifying.
about who should make the decision. You don't have to pitch how much
I'm
of
good.
an increase it should be.
I agree with John that this should be done by ordinance, because to do it by referendum every time you want to have a pay increase, even minor, that's a ridiculous notion, because it just doesn't work, as to the fact that it never has been done. But in the ordinance, we can put in measures that, you can't double it. You can't go more than X percentage. We can.
You could also put frequency in.
Right, you can put frequency in, you can gear it to a reputable index, cost of living index, or whatever it is. There are several indexes that we have no control over. You
Sure.
can gear it towards that. You can put other limitations which were suggested, so that if you vote for it, you can't collect the increase until after you're reelected. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I don't have strong feelings on that either way, to be honest. But yeah, I think it has to be done by ordinance because like this, you can't do it at all.
Peg?
I'd like to punt on this one, but I will offer a few insights. The state legislature was, not enough coffee again, legislature, sorry, has not had a raise in something like 40, 50 years, but they have been compensated through, and Glenn can correct me if you certainly know better, they've been compensated through expenses, cost of living expenses, travel allowances. And, you know, you've got some guys coming from Key West to Tallahassee, you're talking 10, 12-hour drive. So, so that's a comparison. Secondly, I did a little bit of background because I've lived here 30 years, as you know, and we have paid out over $1 million in total to 5 town managers who were fired in this town, dating back to the, Glenn knows this history too, I'm sure, the late 1980s.
Would you say that again, please?
Yeah, we have paid close to or over $1 million in fees, attorney fees, compensations to 5 town managers who were fired.
Gotcha.
And so I think we need to look at the whole perspective of the town. I mean, it's just, we're straightening it out and the money isn't the point. And we should be utilizing our funds and our tax base to correctly compensate people now. Maybe not now, maybe we should provide for future commissions to have cost of living. I'm not saying we should all have a raise today. It should be an ordinance to answer your question.
Yeah,
But we
that's the
need to look
question.
at the culture of the town, that there's been a lot of dissent and a lot of negative comments. There have been fights in live meetings between commissioners and town managers, and we're very lucky to have Mr. Labadie. So the reason there might be pushback on this is because of the history that if you weren't living here at the time I was, and even before me, that you would be aware of that. I mean, there were some ugly times. So we need to focus on what we're doing to fix the town and not worry about the salaries of us, is my opinion. Let's put it in an ordinance and we can kick it around later. But lastly, I do think that we need to attract talent at the commission level. When we're all gone, we need to attract talent who have some longevity, who can serve. If it's a good person like Arlen Voorhees, he served 4.5 terms, 3 as mayor and 1.5 as commissioner. And he did a heck of a job under him. We got the library and the water plant, and taxes were not raised. And he also settled a major lawsuit with Toscana. We need people like that who come in and serve. And if they're doing well, they keep getting reelected.
Who was that again?
So, Arlen Voorhees, he was my neighbor, which is why I know. And we had common family ties up north. So we need to, I think that our town needs to move forward and encourage people to run for office up here. Bright, smart, engaged people who will make good decisions and not get into this kerfluffle we've had in the past. So that's the end of my little story.
I don't think I have to ask you.
I think it should be in the
know where you
ordinance.
stand. No, go ahead.
In the ordinance, yes.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. Anything with the language?
No, language, I'm fine with the language.
Okay, need a motion?
Because really, it's all going to be handled by the ordinance. So that's
Okay,
all you
right.
do.
Okay,
I move that we accept ordinance number 2021-015 regarding the salaries of commission members.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on now to a discussion of the spending limit for the commission. The recommendation from the review board was 10% of the combined budgets, operating as well as enterprise. That's around 22, 23. Come out to obviously 2.2, 2.3 million. I think when we come up with the number that we're going to propose, we have to think about a few things. One being obviously, how much do we believe we need? Secondly, do we make that a set number that's going to last until the next charter review? Or do we escalate that number off of some index? If that number ends up being a percentage of something like operating or some budgets, combined budgets, whatever, does that then just increase or decrease based on those budgets? Another thing, obviously, we have to consider is what we think the electorate will accept. I got a suggestion from David Stern, the chair of the Finance Board. He suggested that we not do it as a percentage of anything, that it be a fixed number. Reason that he suggested that was that a couple of things. Number one, he said, and most importantly, he said, many people cannot compute percentages in their mind. He said, even as simple as a 10%. He said, they just didn't work with percentages over their lifespan, and they don't know what 10% of 12 million is. He said, they just don't. He said, you know, I know. He said, people sitting on your commission probably know. He said, my wife doesn't know. He said, if I ask her what 10% of 12 million is, she'll have to go get her calculator. Okay. He said, so he really suggests we use a fixed number. If we want to increase that fixed number over time somehow, come up with a creative way to express it. Okay. Second thing he suggested doesn't have to do with this particular subject. He said, but don't spread out the questions for charter. He said, whatever you end up doing, if you've got 3 charter questions, 5 charter questions, put them all on one referendum. Okay, so that's the input from David. Okay, with that said, let's start kicking this thing around. John? Oops, you reached. Go ahead. You want to start?
My question, I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea that David Stern had. The question then becomes, what's the amount that you set? I mean, I would encourage that we set increases based on an index so that nobody has to figure out how much it is except our accountants. But where do we set it? So that we don't have to go to a referendum for what really amounts to almost normal operating things.
Let's think back. I had made mention last time that the 350 that we're currently operating with dates way, way back to the early 1990s. And I had asked Marshall, what was the environment of, not the environment so much as what were the requirements of the operating and the operation of the town back then? And we don't know that the 350 that they had set was the right number or the wrong number. We always keep thinking, well, 350 times 3% a year, what would that be today? Well, maybe they needed 500 back then, or maybe they only needed 250. I don't know. I don't know how they came up with the 350. I don't know that anybody knows today. And the other question is really, what do we need moving forward? So both of those questions I'm going to refer to Marshall on and ask Marshall to kind of give us his thinking.
Well, I sent you just as a procedural, I sent some background information,
That was
30
great.
years of budgets.
Great information.
I
by
know
the
it
way.
was for fire, but you could see what our general fund budget was all the way back to 89. So at least you get an idea. Boy, if we approved that in 91, it was like 12-15% was the 350 of our budget. You go to today and it's, you know, a smaller percentage. Right? So I also put together for the Charter Review Board. I apologize for saying that a little bit later. I couldn't remember where I put it, but I actually put it into my notes. we're going to have now moving forward, which they didn't have before, is we're going to have a full service public safety department. That meaning fire predominantly, equipment and apparatus for fire now and something in the future, what that may hold. So if you start looking at things, ladder trucks, rescue vehicles, I mean, the 2 vehicles are over the 350 now. So any number that we get beyond that is very helpful from a management perspective to ensure that we have the equipment to maintain and operate. And I'm not quite sure the comfort level that if we have a full service fire department and we have to go to the voters to buy a new rig, and we need it to provide the service, it's kind of a gamble. I would hope everybody would continue, but as we've talked about already, we don't know the future. It's uncertain. Commissioners, managers, chiefs, we just don't know who will be there. So I put out some of those numbers that, $1 million for a ladder truck is probably a little bit too low. Maybe it's $1.2 million, but around that, you would need that at some point in time. And in our horizon, we're guessing sometime in the next 10 years, because we're going to take one off of lease. The life cycle is maybe 10 to 15 years on a ladder truck. Our first 10 years of operation, we're going to need a new truck. We just don't know the condition. Rescues, 450 could be a little bit less, could be probably a little bit less than 450. Resurfacing our streets are over 350. I mean, I'm telling you types of projects. Yeah.
Time out a second.
Yep.
Those vehicles also have to be outfitted.
Correct.
So that number's not in the 450, for example.
I think the
That's a question
450 is a
mark.
comfortable number for a rescue. The ladder, I think it might be a little bit light on when I presented that to the Charter Review Board as we're starting to look at those numbers more seriously with implementation. You could get something around 850, but it's not outfitted. That's just
No.
the base price. So now, I put in 150 for outfitting. We were coming to find that maybe that isn't enough.
Right.
With
We're
certain
probably
fleets.
talking $1 million
Yeah.
at least. Little.
So
That's
right around
probably
there. The other project that's of concern to me is our sewer lining project.
Right.
That's $1.1 million. That's more than 350. I mean, we all know that the 350 just doesn't seem to be very practical based on the scope and scale of our
No.
services and operations. Running a reverse osmosis plant with 5 lift stations, having a sewer system that's got through all the pipes and lining, our roads, the cost of materials for asphalt and resurfacing, handling our, while small storm water system, we still have to maintain those pipes and putting those things in. So in the future, resurfacing the walkway, which was a relatively affordable project for us around 200, 5, 10, 6 years from now, we're going to be creeping up to that 350 again. So I think we've matured out of that level, that cost or expense side of 350 based on our operation and growing. So I think we need to, you guys are doing that, taking that great look. But again, we're expanding, a little more complex world. There's more mandates that are imposed, more requirements. So, we got to keep that in line. But the way we were in 91, for those in the room that were here in 91, probably a slower moving town, a little more laid back, not as active. Since that point in time, we built a brand new RO, $20 million RO operate water treatment plant. You didn't have that when you came up with 350. Now you have, those trains can be quite expensive. So if one of those treatment lines go down, I think I had that in today's dollar. It's like $400,000 for the membrane. We can't even buy, we're done. We can't even make the water. We're really imposing that restriction. So we need to get that up to maintain those base level services that we have committed to provide to the residents. And I think that's a good one, is the RO system, that if we lose a part of that, we're not treating water, because if we have duplicates, but one goes down and then we're on that and that goes down, then we're done. And you're required to produce water and run a plant, you have to have backups and contingencies and redundancies in the system.
So if 2 of these things occur, you're over $1 million.
Yeah, we're at 350. And again, I know that the Charter Review Board spent a lot of time on this, so I do want to commend them. They spent a lot of time digging into this. We couldn't find any community with a spending limit. We couldn't find one.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's one out there. We couldn't
let's-
readily find one that has that.
okay, would you update the commission
Mhm.
on the reality that in fact, we really do have spending limits with regardless of the 350?
Sure.
Basically our financing limits, the fact that we can only finance up to the non-ad valorem revenue that I guess I'm updating them.
Sure,
But
right,
you-
like that's back to that
You know
inside
more of the
scoop, right, inside
details, so why
baseball.
don't you go through it?
Yeah, and Matt at the time helped us and we had that conversation with the Charter Review Board as well. Anytime you pledge your ad valorem tax base, the dollars that we tax residents, to finance against it requires a vote of the people. So whether you're issuing a bond or you're going to go out and do a long-term bank note, the community has to agree to pledge the ad valorem taxes as the backstop for that loan or debt service, okay? So immediately we can't. So then what could we do or finance independently? What we can finance independently would be revenue sources that are not ad valorem. Those would be like franchise fees that we get from FP&L, maybe some other types of small revenue sources we get to cover our annual debt service. So you take out a couple $1 million, that's going to take out the rest of our ability to take any type of borrowing. So basically, if you think about it, really large scale borrowing is going to require and is statutorily required to get the vote of the people. Now, you could spend the reserves. Nothing keeps or limits the commission on that outside of your other policies that you have on fund balance protections for storm, budget stabilization, things of that nature. So if you had no limits at all, you already have not naturally, but statutory limitations placed on you to what you can or can't do. And that's pretty limiting. So it's not that you could go out. So I know everybody still has the taste or the flavor of Ocean Walk where we wanted to borrow $45 million. You couldn't do it without asking the people to do it anyway. So those type of outliers or situations require the voters, no matter how the commission and the town manager or staff decided that this had to happen, you just can't. So, we have to be careful as to what we can borrow independently. Even if you you still have to go to the voters. I mean, you still have to.
Okay, next question.
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, what is the required amount, let's say, in the next 12 months, starting in January, or if you want to go to the next fiscal year, whatever, running 12 months is a comfortable level? Is it $1 million? Is it $1.2 million? Is it 700,000? Is it 2 million?
I would
what do
look
you
at it
think
from a
we
larger,
need comfortably?
I mean, I think we have to look at it a slightly larger time period. I would probably think of it like your 5-year CIP type program would be more manageable because you could go 12 months and go
Well,
really small.
No,
but-
because it's per expenditure. It's not over time.
Mhm.
In other words, we could have 2 or 3 of these, call them catastrophes, major expenses, but the requirement is per expenditure, per activity, per item.
Well,
I mean, we could have
what would number, I
we
would
could
say
have
$1 million or
freaking
2 would be.
ambulance and something else, but as long as none of them, no individual item was more than X.
I was comfortable with the charter review boards, combined enterprise fund, 10%. I recognize some of the constraints, but that would handle anything now and over the next 5 to 10 year period. I think that number you could easily operate within and feel comfortable you could address any issues that come up. Now, the hard part is you guys got to take that kind of number. So I'll, the fun readings we get to have, town manager Marshall's out of control here at 2 million, but that number is comfortable for us to operate within with the expanded service operations with, as we'll talk this afternoon, Marine units, adding a few more officers over time. I think operating the RO plant, a couple $1 million, we're comfortable.
What
Now,
single expense do you anticipate over the next whatever period do you think would cost $2 million?
at 2 million, I don't think there's one particular one that I could come up with, but it does give you breathing room. Now, $1.2 million to $1.5 million, ladder truck, sewer. We'll probably have to have some RO equipment updated. So, you know, $1 million would be a very comfortable number. But again, I don't know that you guys are comfortable with that, but those are the big tickets. That sewer lining project, it's $1.2 million. I need to get that done for you. I need to get that done. Now, luckily we got federal dollars. Maybe we could just use earmarked federal dollars and not have to worry about the charter, but we're in a spot where how do I fix that without being people stating that there's some gamesmanship or I'm trying to work around, and I don't know that it's a workaround, but I need to fix your sewer system. So, you know, I would say $1.2 million based on that project alone over the next year. And, you know, and we have some other road paving that's going to have to come. We can do that slowly over time. But if we did it all at once, like all of the road paving and addressed it properly, you know, it's $500,000, $600,000, Where does that come from?
It's less than $1.2 million. The only thing I'm hearing that today is $1.2 million is the fire truck and the pipes.
Well, I need a fire station, but we got that approved by the charter. We got that approved through the referendum. I need to do something with the fire station.
So if we were, I'm just thinking out loud, if we were to do $1.2 million and we had some escalator built into it, because $1.2 million today is not going to buy a fire truck in 9 years.
Correct.
So you got to have an escalator in it, or numbers got to be bigger than $1.2 million.
And that's where we come back to your point about percentages. I really feel comfortable with $1.2 million number, with a 10% of the operating budget being the ongoing guide. The operating budget is going to change. It's going to reflect the different enterprises, the different expansions within each of those enterprises, you know, separate from police.
John, it could go down.
It could go down. Yeah,
But
not likely.
But we're always going to need $1.2 million plus, because the cost of the big tickets that we're talking about are guaranteed to go up.
On what? Okay, except for small numbers, I can't imagine the operating budget going down in any significant way.
Well, if we're going to save over $2 million a year in the fire department, our debt service costs are going to be less than $2 million a year.
So I said $1.2 million or 10% of the operating budget.
Oh, okay. I would rather, first of all, take Stern's suggestion of not using a percentage of the operating budget, because people have trouble with percentages.
But that's like asking them to know all of the finances that go on. I mean, that's a bit unreasonable, I think.
Well,
I mean,
because you or I have no problem with understanding what 10% is, doesn't mean the population has a problem with it. But regardless, if we took $1.2 million, I'm just throwing a number out, and we put an escalator in it, then we're safe.
yeah. So what's wrong with $1.2 million or 10% of the operating budget going forward, whichever is higher?
You're covered with an escalator.
That is covering with an escalator.
Well, if you put a CPI escalator or something else that we agreed to, then
So
you're covered. Then you don't
$1.2 million
need-
plus a CPI index.
Yeah, something like that. Period. Then you don't.
I don't
need to-
think
then
people
you
know
don't-
what a CPI
Yeah,
is.
how come,
To be
how can
honest
they
with you.
calculate a CPI index, but not a percentage of
You
the
can see
operating?
their
I don't
eyelids
understand
closing
that.
as you say CPI.
Yeah,
Or maybe you've put in to go up 50,000 a year.
See,
To be reviewed every 2 years.
See, but the operating budget reflects the relative demand and plans that we have on a
Right.
yearly basis.
It does not.
and inflation. I think inflation is a big deal. I think inflation could be, we don't know what's going to happen with inflation the next few
Say it
years.
again, please.
Inflation. I'm concerned about the level of inflation. If
I
we
am
put
too.
in a flat dollar amount, I think another benefit of tying it to a budget is then you have a inflation, an inflation adjustment that's tied to our town.
I really don't, I mean, if I'm thinking about it a little more, I don't want to put other commissions in the position that we're in, where we can't do things that need to be done
Yes.
because we are limited. And if we break it up over a couple of years, then we're accused of playing games. But how do you reline a sewer system that will cost you, when we're finished, possibly even $1.2 million, if you can't break it up and you can't spend the money, and we're hogtied at this
All
point.
right, let's cut to the chase. If we have to go to the electorate for the sewer system, they're all going to vote yes. Nobody wants smelly roads. Nobody wants to be told they can't flush their toilets. That's not an issue. But if we have to go to them for $1 million plus for a fire truck, believe it or not, it's going to be a tough sell.
Yes.
Back to your point, we know more than they do.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But our job is the health and safety of our community. So we have to educate them. And if we don't, we got a safety issue in our town, and we have a mutual aid issue. So we have to have enough money to get the fire truck when the chief tells us, got to replace the truck. And also, we can't wait for 6 months or 8 months
Exactly.
or
The
whatever down the
timing is a
road if there
problem.
happens to be an off cycle. So we'd have to spend 60 grand to have a special referendum,
Mhm.
which is a total waste of money.
Total waste. Totally agree.
And again, obviously, all our energies
Yep,
to go through the education process.
absolutely.
So tell me what's wrong with $1.2 million plus or 10%, whichever is higher.
We have to figure out how to attack whatever number we set, how to attack the increase. So let's not worry about that right now. Let's just worry about what the opening number is. And it looks like it's $1.2 million.
I'm
It's
assuming
whatever
that-
we think the cost is going to be of the new fire truck when the time comes.
And that's in 5, 7, 8 years. The point is, it's going to be out there, and I think you're right. Whatever costs 800,000 today probably costs $1 million.
Yeah.
You know, by that
Right.
time. And the way inflation's going, we're going to be looking at 10% inflation here, but short term anyway. But the point
Well,
is,
4 or
we have a
5
way
anyways.
of adjusting over time. That's
Yeah.
what you're really saying.
So we'll back into whatever that number is. Maybe the number is $1 million. Because in 5 years or 8 years, we need the new fire truck and we've got to have enough money. We have to allow ourselves enough money to make that decision without going to the electorate, because you don't know whatever it is 8, 9 months in advance.
Well, again, the town manager is saying he'd be comfortable with $1.2 million
Well,
on a reasonable basis.
I don't know if that's the right number or the wrong number. We've got to go through the exercise. You know, he's guessing right now.
Mayor,
But 1 second. The issue is also, once we make the decision, we may have to wait as much as 18 months for delivery.
Right.
Those trucks are not sitting in inventory.
Right.
And the delivery cycle will probably be longer now because of the supply line issues.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we need to know that we have enough decision-making power, which is dollars and cents right now. Okay. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to properly service the safety of our population. Peggy?
yes, sir, thanks. I had done some numbers before coming in, and 2 things. The 350,000 at today's inflation rate would equal about 747,000. And then take 747 rounded up to 750 in 10 years, the number for that is $1,110,183.21. So it's 111. That's at the inflation at 4%. But I agree with you. We don't know what the inflation percent will be. I mean, I'm paying double gas in my gas guzzling truck as I did 3 years ago. And we have other issues. We don't know what's going to be the state of the country in 10 years. So I don't know how to justify that in these numbers we're discussing. That's my big question.
Well, it really comes down to the biggest ticket item that we're looking at is the truck.
Well, the water treatment is,
yeah.
the supply well, the estimate is 1.5. The membrane, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
if we have to drill a new well, it could be 1.5 to drill a new well.
So a new, and what's
Hope we
the
don't
like,
need to, but you know, wells do go bad.
And what's the
time.
likelihood of that? Like, is that? Do we-
I don't know. I just asked when I worked this chart up, I worked with Pat and said, oh my God type things. We've done well to clean the wells, this and that, but if at some point in time it just collapses or doesn't supply adequately and we have to go down another, 1,500 feet and put find a location, it's about $1.5 million. Now, I hope it doesn't happen over the next so many years, but wells are drilled on every 10, 15, 20 years, you have to drill wells.
And is that considered a disaster situation or?
I just called Glenn to the microphone.
I mean, we have backup wells too, but I'm
We're
just
thinking
saying.
exactly the same way. Is that fall under emergencies?
Under emergencies, if the well fails,
Yeah. Can we just go and spend the money, get it rolling?
my answer is always going to be, you can always spend the money, just be aware that you may have a backlash from it. So
We have
you could have a public backlash from that, of course,
Splash.
but
Well,
um,
gotcha. Okay.
not backflow.
Ha, ha,
ha. The whole idea of the natural catastrophes or, in that spending limitation, that, as you all know, the spending limitation has bedeviled the town for years.
Right.
So I'm not sure what you're going to come up with today, but I think staff standpoint, we all hope that something, because it just ties the hands of the town to make
Okay,
any substantial improvements.
I have a question because you have worked with other towns. The towns you worked with, have they had limits or no limit? Has there been an issue in any of these towns where they spent wildly and public uproar? So why do people
Nothing I
think,
could think of now.
why do people think we're going to do that? I mean, it's not like we're any more
Misinformation.
spend free than any place else.
As you talked about 1991, why they did what they did, and at the same time frame approved their contract with Del Rey that exceeded that limit. I researched that and looked at it, and there's no answer.
So I'm not even sure why we're talking about limits if no one else has them. And they don't appear to be necessary.
Mayor,
Yeah.
without sounding like a know-it-all, because I'm not, but I've lived here a long time, if I could state something that Glenn could actually help weigh in on. What happened back in the late 89 is the state legislature, I actually pulled it up, it's the Attorney General opinion, 9054. In 1990, they enacted the home rule. And home rule allowed local governments, which is the big League of Cities issue, allowed local governments to, I can read from it for you, to spend monies as they wished without state oversight. And the actual law states, before this home rule was enacted, a governing body of a municipality could not enter into a contract that extended beyond the terms of office of the members, beyond the commission office, if the subject matter of the contract was governmental. The governing body could, however, enter into contracts involving subjects of a proprietary nature. When this was enacted, the following year, this commission set forth the spending limit. And there was a lot of kerfluffle going on back then about if the managers and the commission all knew what they were doing. That's the reason. And that launched it. And the reason I know is when I ran for office in 2017, this was going to be a debate question. And I went and talked to my two neighbors, John Rand and Arlen Voorhees, and they gave me the background, and they were seated at that time. So if that helps you, other towns did not, because they employed the various state laws that allow us to act as we do. And I'll copy everyone on this. There are 4 Attorney General questions that were answered, but that's what started it. This was Bob Butterworth, who is a very well-respected AG.
Crazy.
So
Rick, did you want
get
to
that
add
to
something?
everybody.
Rick Greenwald, Bellito. I guess where I would come down with this is sort of to think a little bit out of the box and to refer to my minority opinion that I submitted on the Charter Review Committee report, which is we went back and forth about this a lot. And I think that the basic concept that we're operating on, namely looking at some spending limit per single item, is seriously flawed for the reasons that the commission has found over the years. Not only is it set way too low at this point, but the whole concept of what's a project, what's a piece of equipment, what's something that's going to be spent over 3 years and broken up. How do we define it? Well, let's lease it for a year and then we avoid the limit. All those kinds of things are very artificial, subject to controversy, and not constructive to good governance. The other thing that I learned as part of the Charter Review Board, because I didn't know much about any of this, is that, as has been pointed out today, there already are significant limits on government spending that are set elsewhere. The town is required to have a balanced budget. The budget is always up for review and so on. Everybody knows about it. It's out in the open, and it must be a balanced budget. You can't borrow money guaranteed by ad valorem taxes without a referendum. Again, public referendum. There are other things that are out there, trim, which tells you how much you're allowed to raise taxes. You can't just go hog wild. Now, we have in our charter the 10 mills. That's already in the charter. But we're only at 3.2 or thereabouts. So actually the commission as it is, and I put those numbers in my minority report as well. My personal bias is that the commission probably has too much authority now to raise taxes. Because if you wanted to, by a 5-0 vote, you could actually raise our taxes by 300%, which is something that the commission might want to look at somewhere else. Same thing, there are other potential safeguards that could be put in that we don't have now in terms of limiting the commission's ability to spend all our reserve funds on a given project just by a majority vote of the commission. We don't have any limits. We might want to think about, I don't know what the percentage is, but only a certain percentage at a time. Given the constraints that are already there, and potential ones that I just alluded to that the commission might be willing to consider in the future, I think my personal bias, and I don't know if politically this will pass, but I think it's the best governance solution, is to do away with this whole single item percentage of whatever and do what every other town that we could find, with the exception of, I think, was Palm Beach, which had some percentage of their total real estate assessments, which was going to be like billions of dollars in their budget anyway. Nobody else has these kinds of artificial constraints, which what I've seen just contribute to making good governance increasingly more difficult and doesn't serve a constructive purpose. I think there are pretty good constraints already there, requiring a balanced budget, requiring a referendum for any kind of guaranteed borrowing. I think there are other restrictions that you could in place and it could put in place in terms of how much you can raise taxes, how much of the reserve fund you can spend without referendum. And I think that if we're brave, that's the direction to go, rather than creating some other artificial limit that's going to be subject to the same kind of potential charges of gamesmanship and everything else that the commission's been dealing with. I think that it's just inefficient. I mean, we need to get sewers fixed. Why should it be spread out over 3 or 4 years? That makes no sense if it can be done more efficiently. We even saw it with the crosswalks.
Exactly.
It just makes no sense. So anyway, that's my thought on the subject. I don't know if politically you'll think it'll fly.
Thank you,
but
Rick. Here's
That's
the,
where I came down on it.
we would all love to do that. The problem is if it goes to the referendum and it gets voted down, then we're stuck with 350. I don't know
Yeah.
that that's the roll of the dice we want to do.
I think we all agree with you, Rick. No question about it. It's good executive management to have that kind of freedom, and it's irresponsible. However, we have political handcuffs based upon history, and that's the problem, combined with some activists that would work really hard against us.
Good point. We're paying for the sins of the past right now. That's going to take a while to work our way out of that.
It's a trust issue.
But I totally agree with you. I mean, why should we be such a unique town? But right now it is what it is. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Barry Donaldson, 3700 South Ocean Boulevard. Marshall did a very good job explaining the basis of what we examined as the Charter Commission. We did not want to just dream up a number. We just pluck something out of the air. The important thing to the Charter Board was to identify a clear understanding of the kind of expenses this town might be facing in the future. Keeping in mind the time frame that has passed since that 350 was put in place, you're not necessarily looking at a 10-year time frame here. You could be looking at a 20-year time frame very easily, given the political atmospheres at various times. So all of that brought us to an understanding that we did not want to unduly tie the hands of a future commission or this commission. But we also felt it wise to keep some power with the electorate. The balance we settled on was that 10% number. And we ultimately decided to do that. Most of us, there was, a little bit of discussion and minority opinion on that, but that it was the simplest thing to present to the electorate and the most understandable that would be an organic treatment of that number and able to grow or shrink depending upon the policies and budgets of the town. So that is how we got where the majority got where we did. I think we felt it was well-founded. It had a rationale. And as was pointed out by Doc and others, there are spending limits in place that will always be there. And there are actions by the electorate to change the commission that is also there. So you have those controls. They're built in, they're going to be there. What we're talking about is what can we do for our commission and the future commissions to run the town responsibly and to respond to the real needs at any point in time.
I don't think anybody here disagrees with the board. The question becomes, would it pass the test of the electorate? And
That's the
that's
question.
really what we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And to be clear for the electorate and our viewers, you're talking 10% of the combined operating and
Yes.
enterprise funds,
Yeah,
which is double the number of just the operating budget.
Yeah.
Because expenditures are attached to each of those.
Yeah.
yeah,
So we
because
brought
they're
them all
projecting
together.
out what future needs will be. So I mean, nobody disagrees with your recommendation from the need standpoint. My personal concern, and I would guess it's everybody else's concern here, is would the electorate agree with that number?
And to that degree, that is why we did not, and we did discuss, get rid of it, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
And we did discuss that, and we did feel it was important to keep some level of power with the electorate in those decisions.
Can we put both questions on?
Well, Glenn, would you come up?
Oh, if you do that, you'll
Could we?
drive people nuts. And yeah.
But you may water it down, right? might not get a majority for
Yeah,
one
could
of
we-
them or
It-
something.
it
Could
be a
we
problem.
could we ask a question that has kind of a multiple choice for the answer? For example, could we ask a question that says, which of the following would you prefer? 2.3 million or a number? 2.3 million, 1.5 million, 1.2 million.
I wish you could. I mean, you could to get a sense of the community, but not to change the charter because each one has to stand alone. So you could ask two different charter questions. But the issue then is that creates confusion. You know, if you're saying question number one, eliminate the funding limit. Question number two, place whatever it is, 10% of operating, 10% of enterprise and operating. And then people could say, what are you doing? And then if you do that, there's always the question, if they both pass, which is the one that's effective? And I haven't researched this in a long time. My memory is the higher vote getter. So if 60% of the people vote to 10% and 59% vote to eliminate, you've got the 10%. But I want to research that issue because it's been at least 10 years since I looked at
But
that.
we could not have both answers on one question.
No, because they have to say shall and end with the yes or a no.
Gotcha. Okay. But we could ask them as two separate questions, possibly.
Good. And again, if you want between now and next week, I'll certainly research. If my memory is correct, that it's the highest vote getter wins of those two.
Okay, so then possibly we could ask 10% of operating, I'm just using this as an example, or 15% of operating, hypothetically. And then the highest vote getter wins.
Well, I think if you ask 10% or 15%, I think you'll probably find most people will go with the 10%.
Correct.
Because you're
Yes.
giving basically the same options. If you're going to do it as two, you need to word it completely different. Maybe one would be a limit with a built-in increase as opposed to the other saying a percentage.
Yeah,
of the
right. I
budget.
mean, I'm just being very simplistic right now for concept, that's all. It's
But
an
also,
interesting
if
thought.
Marshall says that the projects he could see would be 1.2, I'm not comfortable with that using a 1.2 limit, because what if it's more? What if it's 1.3 instead of 1.2? And then you're back to where you can't do it.
Well,
So
then
I would
he
want
gets
to,
a truck with three wheels.
yeah, I would like to build in some comfort level, especially since this isn't going to change every year.
Yeah, we have to figure all that out. right?
It's,
We got a lot of work to do on this. What is it? Go through the calendar again. On what our deadlines are.
Now,
soon,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to put you guys in a box, but I mean,
tomorrow.
we have to have a little bit of time between first and second read. So we believe we can squeeze, if you, by next Tuesday, if you were to do a first read on this question, we could get a second read on the 9th of December and meet our drop dead deadline from the county. But going beyond that, then we won't have the public advertisement approach in between. Now, you could hold this, work on it longer, do more, whatever it is you need to do to feel comfortable with the number, and then hit the November election, because there is going to be an gubernatorial and House seat election.
Well, that
on
was kind of our backup if we lost.
You can't ask the same question within 6 months. So if you ask it in March, you can't ask it in November. You have to wait till the following March.
Yeah, but
But
if-
phrase it differently
Yeah.
and
No,
turn
no,
it
no.
into a different question.
I
Yeah,
guess.
So
exactly.
Leave
if,
that to the
if we
attorney to
ask-
see how much you
If
change.
we ask for 10% and it's no, we ask for 11% the next time.
well, no, that, I don't know if that's enough of a change, but you could say 10% and then the next time say a 1.5. So it changes the dynamics of the question.
Is it really the type of question or
Yes.
how much you ask for? 'Cause if
Agreed.
you're asking
We
for a
would change
spending
it
limit, you just change the
To
number
whatever
every
degree
4
necessary.
months.
Let's focus on Libby, not worried about- Mayor, just
Yes, sir.
a comment. To me, we have two options here. We either do the 10% of the operating budget or $1.2 million, whichever is higher, or delete any limits.
I would like to delete it. I don't have. the
Why can't
guts.
the two be on that question at the referendum? One, A is 10% of the operating budget or $1.2 million per year, whichever is higher, or delete any limitations.
We don't have enough time. When is this? This is next March.
For March.
Yeah, we
So we have to have it, actually, I think it was 12/6 or 12/7. We're going to push to 12/9. Hopefully she'll let us, Wendy will let us do that, or she gave us 12/8. So it's like the day after. So I think she'll give us a day. My concern would be is once we give it to them, you know, the cold feet timeline kind of shrinks too. So once it's on the ballot, then you have to send out insert a flyer if you guys change your mind and say, don't vote on this question, then it even more
Yeah.
complexity. So if you want it on, I would say leave it on and go for it.
March what?
What is the election? March
8th.
8th. Thank you.
Commissioner Shoemaker, can you clarify what it was? You were thinking two questions on one ballot and
One question, part A is to establish whether the limitation is $1.2 million plus 10% of the operating budget, whichever is higher, right?
that's one question, yes or no, right?
Or delete any limitation of expenditures.
And then a
Okay.
second
So
question
either
that
way-
says,
Either way, we would win.
Okay, I'd like to take a 10-minute break, please. Okay. Linelda,
Yes.
would you turn the cameras off, please?
Thank you, guys. We are witnesses. We didn't talk business.
Follow through on our chores. There we are.
You guys are great. You get a special award. Right? We are now live. Did you give us too much to talk about?
So we are live, right? We are live. So for our viewers, it's absolutely a restroom
For
break.
next year,
What is it, 1, 2, and 1? We're not talking about this.
13, like 13 million, 12 million, 13 million. Is that what you're saying? Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, it's about $1 million a month. Yeah. Oh, and then for the other budgets, I think that, let me look. Yeah, it's about that. It's about that. Yes.
I didn't have my mic turned on, but for the viewers, we did not discuss business, town business. We had a official coffee break.
Okay, we're good to go. Thank you all for your patience. I'd like to suggest that we go with 2 questions. One question would be asking the electorate to totally eliminate the spending limit. And then the second question would be asking for a 5% of the total operating expense for the town. And we'll get the right wording down, but it would be the combination of the two, which is around 25 million.
So it's
So
half
it'd
of
be-
their recommendation,
Yeah.
right? Because their recommendation was
it'd be-
10, so it's
Right,
half.
theirs was 10, it would be 5% instead of 10%. That would come out to around million, about 12.5, right? So
Be about $1
we'd be
million
looking
to
about
5%.
$1,250,000, round number. And then we would put some type of an escalator in there. It could be, it would always stay at that. So as the budget grows, that would grow, or it would be an escalator based on CPI or something. We've got to first determine that. But the strategy we would be looking at is 1, just totally eliminating it, as Rick was suggesting, or 2, 5% of the combined. Okay,
I could do
you
that.
good with that? You're shaking your head, Evelyn?
I think it may be a little confusing, but I have no problem
Yeah,
doing it.
we'd have to work out proper wording, and
Yeah, yeah.
which question is first,
Yeah,
which
I
is
mean-
second, et cetera.
Yeah,
I have a question, Mayor. What type of, how would we educate our electorate?
Via emails.
Would we take another sort of campaign as we did with
Yep.
the fire department so that
Yeah,
they
we
understand?
Probably would do some direct mail.
Because we have very bright, engaged people, and if we explain things as we see them and are handling them, often they will respond and they will start to understand. But if you just see a number on a piece of paper, so I'm looking for some kind of, I'm just asking if we
Yeah.
would then, have Mr. Labadie undertake sort of an educational.
Yeah, that's why I had asked, when in March, it's March 8th, so that
Yes, sir.
month is probably non-existent. December is obviously holidays.
Mm.
So, we have a little bit of December, and then we have January and February. Maybe we do another breakfast with the mayor, probably do a couple more food trucks. But yeah, we need an educational campaign.
Okay, thank you.
What do you think?
I like it a lot. I really like pegging it to the budget. I think that's really important. I can sympathize with people who don't like the mathematical formula. I love it.
kidding.
But I think that's part of our educational campaign. And I also think hopefully people liked the letters from the commissioners. I think maybe we can, in our, I don't know what, I wonder if we're due again to do a letter from a commissioner, but anyway, when we do a letter, I could even handle that one if you wanted, or I don't know. Maybe we could describe a little bit more fully.
Yep.
So that the non-mathematical types could hear our different perspectives on that. I like the second question. I think it will, the outcome will most likely depend on how well we educate everyone about the merits of this and the helping everyone understand, just like the charter members. I think that was impactful on me for them to say that, they had no idea. And I am the same way. There are so many things that I'm learning throughout this whole process that I did not realize. And I think if the intelligent residents of our town fully understood it, then I think they would agree with us. I just can't imagine they would not agree with us. So
The rationale behind doing 5% of the overall budget as opposed to 10% of operating, although 10% is an easy number for any of us to calculate, didn't think people would understand what's the operating budget. What do you mean operating? We thought just here's what it costs to run the town.
Right.
Because enterprise fund, nobody knows what that is either. So accepting the fact that a lot of people just don't understand percentages, we're not going to educate people on how to calculate percentages. So we just thought 5% just sounds a lot smaller than 10%. Okay, so thought that would be a better approach from
Yeah, I
that
guess
aspect.
the only thing
And
I'd say,
let me finish.
okay,
I really wanted to go after none.
right.
So if somebody likes the fact after our educational campaign to say, yeah, you're right, there shouldn't be a limit, great, we give them that opportunity. If not, then we're down to the 5%.
Yep.
So that was the thinking behind it. Go ahead.
I agree with that. I guess I'm looking through the budget presentation, like when the 2022 budget was presented to us, I guess the only thing I'll say is I'm a little bit more familiar with like the general fund. Like I'm going through these slides. Nowhere do I see the total amount on there. And so maybe we could
Total town fund.
total town funds. You have to add up the different slides to get to that number.
Right.
So maybe a little bit more in our communications to make sure that we have what the total.
Yeah, so we do that with the trim under our resolutions to approve our budget in September. You see the whole package where you see general fund, water, sewer, discretionary sales tax. You see that all added up as our total budget, and then we approve that with the state. But again, in the presentations that Matt and I have gotten comfortable providing, we break it down in more detail. You're right. It's kind of that.
And it's a recommendation to be a little bit more explicit on what is the total budget for the town, just not
Yeah.
in there.
But again,
Yeah,
trim
here's what
is,
it costs to run the town.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry.
trim
Go ahead.
is the truth in millage.
Yeah.
So that is on one page is kind of a summary
Yeah.
for here at enterprise and operating budgets, total town budget.
Yeah, it got debt service in it, the whole
Right,
thing
right.
wrapped up.
So it is available. We just haven't seen it yet for this year.
Okay, that takes care of that one. Any more questions, discussion on it? Would you start working on language, please?
One brief question, Mayor. Dr. Greenwald had suggested in the data that we do we need to define any of the specifics that he asked for?
Like,
He had asked for what exactly constitutes a project? What about spending over several year period, splitting line items and renting and leasing? Do we need to get into any of that?
I think it'll
Okay.
just confuse people.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, done. One more.
Two questions.
Yep,
Two questions. One, to remove the cap.
correct,
Second would be 5% of total overall budget.
correct.
Okay. Glenn, shake your head. Yep, we're good.
Okay, let's move on to the second subject. That being, we have the government grant for the cost to take care of the pipes.
Right.
Glenn informs us that we can use that money and go ahead with the project. Projects around $1.3 million, $2 million.
That's what we're estimating.
Estimating.
Engineers estimate.
So the money that we got in the grant pays for the whole thing. Therefore, we're not using any of, quote, our money. Because we're not using any of our money, it's all government grant money. And the fact that it exceeds our 350 doesn't matter. Don't have to go to referendum on it.
And the time frame to spend it doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. We have a time frame.
What do you mean?
And the time frame is part of the grant.
Our agreement that we have with FDEM says we have to have those dollars pretty much spent. You could track over, but it's a December, I believe, of 24, all dollars spent. We get 2 pushes to about $2 million. It's 1.988 million. And we have to, we've got our first distribution from them. So we got 900 and some odd $1,000 initially. So we have already received those dollars. And as you remember from our budget, we just kind of slotted it into a couple of spots.
Now, this money must be spent in specific areas, obviously, and this qualifies under those
The only
guidelines.
thing for us that we have that we could spend the money on after going through everything is water, sewer.
Okay, so here's the question. Do we want to just move forward on it? Or do we want to put this to the electorate? Don't have to. We will have an opinion letter from Glenn covering
Clarification.
what I just said.
But you're saying that legal has reviewed and approved the use of these federal funds by the town, even though it exceeds the 350, without violating our,
That is
Authority.
correct, because it's not town money.
correct.
It's money from the government that can only be spent in certain areas. This area qualifies under those
And
guidelines.
again, I'm summarizing that for our viewers
Yep.
because it's also money that we've gotten. It's not part of the budget, but it has to be spent by a certain amount of time and on a specific kind of project, which is for us a mandatory project anyway. It's sewer and water.
That's right. And we have manager's got his hand up.
I would just say that this is important also moving forward as we ask for state appropriations. If we ever get a state appropriation over 350, if we can't go ahead and take earmarked dollars for a specific purpose that doesn't require ours, we're chasing nothing then because we can't go get those dollars.
Oh, yeah. If we end up giving this money back,
Yes.
we ain't getting any more down the road.
But the state and the Fed, they find very good ways to spend that money.
Right, Glenn?
Again, this is going to be a limited opinion to the ARPA dollars because the rescue plan dollars are very specific. They're in response to the natural catastrophe of COVID dollars. Our 350 limit has an exemption for natural catastrophes. The ARPA dollars specifically talk about water, sewer infrastructure. So based on that combination of our language, that federal law, we could use that dollars, those federal dollars for this sewer project without the need to go to referendum. That's it in a
Thank you.
nutshell.
I mean, I don't see any reason either, but needed commission discussion. You have anything to add?
No, I don't think it has to go to referendum. And if we don't spend it, we lose it. So
Right.
it makes no sense not to spend it.
Yep. Okay. Peg?
Totally agreed. And the key words are if it doesn't come from ad valorem taxes, so probes are covered, grants, any of that, 100%, I think we need to go for it.
Yep. Okay.
I just have a quick question. Were there any other projects we were considering using that money for?
So you go through the 150 pages of treasury qualified type projects, and you have to go through this. There's a lot of it with revenue supplementation. So if you look at like Delray and West Palm, they're pushing it in, but then you have to go back and you have to prove it through this. We didn't lose revenue from it, like, because our business community didn't take that hit. We didn't lose foot traffic into a restaurant district, things, parking fees, things that really hit us. So when you really go through that exercise for a non-entitlement community, the only thing that qualified was water, sewer. You could do broadband, but we already have fiber everywhere, but water, sewer infrastructure. And they said the qualifying is if the project qualifies under the Clean Water Drinking Act, or the Drinking Water or the Clean Water Act, which is the SRF type stuff that we have currently. So what we had decided to do is anything that we could submit to the state for low interest financing would qualify for ARP, and that's the Treasury, Federal Treasury's guidelines. So we were saying, we know we need to do some lift stations. We need to do the sewer project. We probably need some pumps and motors and readjustments and electrical work, all in the plant and stuff. All of that, anything that we do related to the water and sewer, our water system and our sewer system qualifies because we can go get a state loan for it. That's kind of the qualifier. So currently we did placeholders. We just threw a little bit in water, threw a little bit in sewer and held it. Now that if we move forward with your directive, I will probably come back with a budget adjustment and show that it's going to be reflected in the sewer fund only for our first tranche. The second tranche we can push over to water.
Will there be money left over?
I hope so.
What is the, yeah,
I'm going to spend it all. Don't worry.
I know, but
I'm trained.
I guess I thought that when you originally got the money, it was going to go towards water and it would help alleviate some of the rate increases that we have going forward.
And they're looking at that right now because Raftalis is in here. Glenn, don't forget to sign before you leave today. Thank you. So we looked at it when we did the water sewer rate study. It was a dump into the 2 million in overall amounts into the water and or sewer. So if we look at that, we're going to take the sewer amount. We'll see what the bids come out is that we could lower the sewer rates or the sewer rate increases
So
could
it's
be
the same.
adjusted.
It's the same. Okay, that's
It's
really
right
my
up your
question.
alley. It's a lot of balancing of
Okay, yeah,
numbers and
it's the
formulas.
same.
so,
Okay, yeah, no, because I guess I was getting a little, when it first came in, I was getting a little excited that maybe our water rates wouldn't have to go up, but they're still not going to have to go up because it's all going to the same type of funds. So it'll all kind of work out.
Yeah, how
So-
much we get is known. How much we spend depends on bids and things that we have to go through a regular. So right now I've authorized Public Works to go out to bid. We're going to have to go out for this sewer lining project because it's so big. You can't piggyback 1.2 million. Len will be really mad at me. So we'll go out and do the regular process of doing a bid document, who wants to line our sewer systems, and we'll do it all in one big project. Everybody's felt comfortable with that, even though I did give options to break it. So we'll see what that number is. If we bid it, I think we can get some synergy on price, maybe get that squeezed down if we give them everything. And we're going to fold in Bellito and our side streets too, which I'm not quite sure was 100% contemplated in our first go around. So we're going to do our entire sewer system, not just A1A sewer system.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else from anybody? On to commission
So-
comments.
We are going to agree to spend the money. Do we have
Yeah, we
to have
just
a
agreed.
special motion or? No?
Well, Glenn will draft that letter. I'll get that over to you. And then if we need more discussions, we could pick that up next Tuesday's meeting, which is the 16th, where we're going to contemplate this language. So if we want to revisit it or see a little bit more exactly what Glenn is saying to feel more comfortable, we'll get his letter anyway to make sure we could, rest
Okay.
assured.
But we're in agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're in agreement.
Absolutely.
As long as-
I'm
sorry.
lost. I'm
done.
looking at our program for this particular meeting,
Yeah.
and it was really only about charter changes.
About what?
This is just ordinances for charter changes.
Yeah.
We weren't supposed to be talking about this here. I don't have a problem talking about it. But we also didn't talk about the term limit.
Oh, I missed it. Sorry. Where is it? What page?
Okay, go to page 5.
Page 5. Ordinance number.
2021-015.
Oh, the last one.
Oh, actually, we did
No.
talk about salaries, sort of.
Yeah.
All right, we did all
Okay.
4 of those that were on there. Then we continued the charter. We got into the ARP stuff because it was another question on spending that related to the
Okay.
funding. So it kind of rolled out, and we will double
Yeah.
back next week
We covered
with the
them all.
formal opinion to finish that discussion.
Yeah, we did
Oh,
the 12, the
it's
first
on
one. That was
page-
the easiest one to go
Yeah,
through.
12 is the one. The
Yeah.
bottom of page 4
Yeah.
is the one I miss.
Yeah. No,
No,
you didn't
no,
miss
we
it. We
talked
did
about
it.
it.
Oh, we
It
did
was,
it. Yeah.
it was such a no-brainer that
Yeah,
we went
it
through.
is right through.
We covered them all.
That was the first
Yeah,
one,
we
the
did.
term limit.
Okay,
You're
Yeah.
good, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. What do you got?
I compliment Commissioner David. Good catch. So I would suggest that your 1:30 meeting, you add to the agenda this little brief sewer discussion again, so that we do it officially and correctly. Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh,
There's always one in the crowd.
yeah, one lawyer to another.
Always a good one in the
What can I
crowd.
say? Mayor? Yes, I wondered if we'll have numbers at that meeting for, we know the amounts of the funding we've been granted, but do we have an updated budget, or we're waiting for the bids to come back, or will we have numbers as to how
For,
much we might have left over from the sewer project and so forth? Is this
So
just
what
going to
we've-
be ongoing?
Yeah, so basically we took that first tranche, plugged it in the budget this year, just picked two spots and you'll see in your budget, there's a recognizing the grant dollars into each of those funds that was mirrored by a combination of capital projects in each of those funds. Guessing on some of the numbers, we'll fine tune it once you give us the directive exactly how we're going to spend it. And we should hopefully have some money, but we just said, test a list of projects against it because all of it qualifies. So we just took a random number to show that we started spending it for all of our capital. So when we report in April to the Treasury Department, we could say these are the things slotted and allotted to it and how far we spent and things of that nature.
okay. Okay, on to comments. John?
General comments?
Yep.
Is that where we're at?
Yes, sir.
Well, I have a few.
Let's save a couple for the next meeting, okay?
Okay. Let's see, then I will skip down to you should have all seen the Coastal Star. And I think that they did a good job on our election.
Yeah.
I also appreciated the article on the veterans.
Great article on that.
And I appreciate also Teresa and I continue to work on this website, the new tab, where we are getting real close. I even made a commitment that we would have it done by the end of the year. So, but that all went, I thought, really well. And because I kind of ran out and did a lot of interviews, I had a backlog, and now we're through the backlog and I'm starting to do more interviews. I have one even scheduled on Friday so that we'll have more articles going forward. And that's it. I'll save the rest for the next session.
Okay, good.
No, I have nothing, certainly nothing about what we discussed just now. We have another meeting coming up.
Okay,
None now, thank you.
okay.
I just wanted to say, Commissioner Shoemaker, thank you for all your work with the veterans. It's, I really enjoy reading the articles and learning about all that you have to write about. And I think your writing is excellent. And I think it's great for our town. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Ditto on that, man. Great work. Absolutely. I'll save my comments to the next session. You got anything?
No, sir.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn. Thank you all. Chief, could you hang back for a minute? Thank you all, and Barry, Rick, thanks for coming in.